Welcome to episode 314 of Destination Linux. Destination Linux is a video podcast from the Tux Digital Network. And if you're new to the show, Destination Linux is a podcast that is perfect for all experience levels. Whether you're brand new to open source or a guru of sudo, this is the podcast for you. My name is Michael.
I'm Jill.
And I'm Ryan.
And on this week's episode of Destination Linux, we're going to be discussing what makes Linux secure. Then we'll talk about Flatpaks getting their eviction papers in the Ubuntu Flavors. Plus, we have our tips, tricks, and software picks. All of this and so much more coming up right now on Destination Linux. This week's feedback comes from Adam. And if you'd like to send your own feedback, you can go to tuxdigital.com/contact to get in touch, or you can join our forum at forum.tuxdigital.com. We're also on Discord now, so if you want to hang out with the community or just game with everyone and chat about Linux, all sorts of stuff, go to tuxdigital.com/discord. So Adam says, "Good morning. My name is Adam. I'm reaching out today after listening to my first episode of Destination Linux yesterday morning to provide some not harsh, definitely fun, and certainly constructive feedback. I promise the quotes that you just made you roll your eyes will make sense below."
How did he know?
So very quickly, my background consists of moderate history in the IT world, about 20 years. Everything from early work as a PC repair tech to most recent role managing in a national commercial fiber infrastructure has kept me engaged on many different levels. They went on to mention a lot of their extensive career, which is very impressive. And they go on to say that I started dabbling in Linux 2002, and I switched over to Fedora and Ubuntu as my primary client OSs at 2009. I don't have Microsoft in my mix anymore, and it feels good, man.
Yeah.
I've had that feeling too. It's fantastic. When I started listening yesterday morning, I was making an hour drive and was tired of the playlist Pandora was tossing my way. I hit the podcast button and typed Linux, and yours came up first. That's good to know. Yes.
Yeah, look at that.
It should.
Number one.
Number one. As it should.
Yes.
When I heard the intro explaining that it was for listeners of all levels, I winced. Well, okay, we'll see where this goes. I've been doing this for a while, but I assume that your level of discussion would be far over my head. And while you did discuss some things that I'll admit I learned from, the content was handled in such a way that it made it very, very listenable and really informative. Fantastic. I understand some of the lingo, probably more than I should, but when you guys stopped and said, for those of you who aren't aware, this is referring to, that is just a solid experience. In fact, in a subsequent episode, another listener, he says, "What's up, Easy Ice?" referenced just that, and Destination Linux makes this community feel warmer and more welcoming for everyone.
Man. Adam's man.
I like this
Adam.
feedback. Yeah.
Adam is
really nice.
Dope.
Yeah.
Big hugs, Adam.
Yes.
And also, I'm glad to hear that you appreciate the fact that we put in the effort to do the all experience levels, no matter what. We do talk about some technical stuff, but we also try to keep it, broken down as much as possible, so that even if you're new to the community and new to the system, you can still get a benefit from it. So it's really great to see that kind of feedback. And he also goes on to say, "I am incredibly impressed. Not that my opinion means much. It does. Wait, I disagree there. It does mean much. But you guys are producing a great show, and had something like this been available 2 decades ago to inform and welcome Linux enthusiasts of all levels, I can only imagine that the level of accomplishment we would have achieved as a community would have skyrocketed back then." I have only one comment for this. I feel like Ryan might be catching some unnecessary flack. Nah, it's fine.
Man, Adam is just, that's my boy right there.
I mean, you get, some of the
Yeah.
flack you get is necessary. What do you mean?
No, it's completely unnecessary. Adam is speaking the truth. He's
Okay, that's
disciple of truth. That's Adam's going to be called from now on. The disciple of truth.
Disciple of truth. The feedback read was in reference to a previous episode in which Ryan had some choice opinion about Vim, NeoVim, etc., versus like a GUI IDE like VS Code or Sublime Text. This listener writing in mentioned that it was not meant to be harsh, and a slight side narrative began about the abuse that Ryan takes because of his opinionated nature of some items.
It's true, though. It's true. Like, if there's going to be a negative, I think this might be the first positive email ever sent about me. I
don't know about ever, but in a
I'm
while.
pretty sure it's ever. This is the first one ever that's specifically about me. Like there's
Maybe
others that kind
specifically.
of mention in passing,
that's
but
fair, because they do also go on to say, "Thank you, Ryan, specifically. Thanks for holding strong on something like this. I'm with you. I like my bloated IDE."
Yes.
Let me have my laggy extensions. And he also says, I freaking love IntelliSense and autocomplete. I don't see him popping up and is suggesting, hey, Adam, you should probably rethink this last one. And I'm not trying to type in a Contra cheat code every time I want to save a file or navigate 2 lines down in some of the editors.
Contra cheat code, up, down, down, left, right, BA, select, start. I still got it after all these years.
Perfect.
Pretty sure that's it. Yeah.
I like this the Contra cheat code thing. That was pretty funny. He says, no, just no to that. I applaud you for even accepting the challenge of trying VM or NeoVim. You're a better nerd than I. Kudos. Then he says, I'll climb down off my soapbox now.
Nah, you can stay on it all day long. I can read your emails every week and be happy. Like, I need more of that.
In closing, thank you all. I sincerely appreciate the effort that you all put in. I'm sure I left out some aspect of admiration in this email that I've drafted in my mind, but I assure you it's there. Thank you for the information, the social warmth, and the facet that you're widening our community. If ever I can do anything for any of you, you have a permanent friend down south.
That's awesome. What an amazing email. Like, thank you so much, Adam, number one, for someone finally taking my side.
Finally,
after all of these years of doing this show, someone took my side in there. And listen, I happen to agree with you on this bloated IDE thing because I have spent many, many days and hours in NeoVim, Vim, Emacs, Doom Emacs, and doing some of the coding that I do, which is typically in Python. Nothing super fancy. I'm not a developer. So you got to keep that in mind too when we're talking about this kind of stuff. It's not like I spend all day developing code and things.
You made an AI product, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's true. I did make Michael AI, which is one of the most advanced AIs in the world.
Of course.
Check out there on GitHub.
ChatGPT is like weak in comparison.
Totally weak, yeah. And mine's fully open source. Like, you just go download it and edit it, do whatever you want with it. The key is that after playing with all of these IDEs and spending all of this time, Adam just nailed it perfectly. Like, yes, I can get NeoVim to do everything Sublime Text can do. After I spend a whole lot of time with settings and other things in setting it up. And as an i3 user, I get people who want to do that. Like, it's the same thing with i3. You got to spend all this time setting things up and you make it perfect for your workflow. And if you're a full-time developer, so for the person who sent that challenge in, like, I get you. I get what you're saying. I see why people like it. I have more respect for it. At the same time, I still want to use Sublime Text. Like, it's just easier. Because while I can set all that stuff up, I could just install Sublime or VS Codium and have it all right there in a nice GUI for me. And I don't have to worry about bloat. Like, I don't care. My systems are so OP, it's insane. Like, they really don't struggle at all with any of this stuff. So I did take the challenge. Completely appreciate NeoVim, Vim, Emacs Doom, the extension community, all the work that goes into it. I think it's cool. But I'm still sticking with the bloated GUIs because it's just easier to get started. And I just don't code enough to make it worth spending all that time setting that type of stuff up. That's just me.
I mean, yeah, I agree completely. That's the same experience I have. That's why I prefer Sublime Text, because I'm not going to, I want to get into working on it. I don't want to go into like the configurations every time I set up a system or have to configure this thing. And also, it's not like it's a simple, you have to find all the different plugins to make it do the things you want to do. And there's not like a single source to get these plugins. So it's kind of like you're digging for these different features and you got to do them one at a time and all that sort of stuff. And then I just install Sublime and I'm done. Like, I like that better.
Yeah.
The only big difference I can see is with Sublime. You can't play ASCII art video like you can with Vim.
Okay, Jill, nobody told me that before. Now I'm changing. I'm completely changing.
That's
now
all
that I
you
know
needed.
Yeah, I mean, that's
all you needed to say, people.
Yeah. There's some amazing extensions out there. Like, don't get me wrong. What the community's done. And people have pre-setup. You try to steal a lot of their pre-setups as well for Vim and NeoVim and use that. And I could see it working. Like, there was I could do my code, I could do my thing, but then I'm trying to learn all these shortcuts and I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
I just don't code enough to make it worthwhile for me. But that doesn't mean you should, just because it's not for me, doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. Like, if you love it, by all means, like, keep loving it.
If you want to use a contra code, use a contra code.
Use a contra code.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Use a contra code. Yes.
Who am I to argue? I use i3.
And OMG, Adam, we are actually blushing inside and our faces are blushing. Thank you so much for writing in and all your kind words that were so beautifully written.
They really were.
And honestly, it is the community of listeners like you, Adam, that skyrocket the Linux community and make our podcast family even better. And as for Ryan, I love his honesty and kindness in spirit. And this podcast wouldn't be so engaging, thought-provoking, and dynamic without him.
What is happening here? This is just to make sure I go to scale, right? It's to make sure I show up at scale. You know, I'm being super nice so that I finally listen, I like how Jill, though, put, I love his honesty and kindness in spirit. So my spirit's kind, but not.
I mean, it depends on what we're talking about in certain cases.
That's a very cleverly chosen sentence there. Kindness in spirit.
It's wonderfully worded because I think it's accurate. And also, it depends if we're talking about app indicators or not.
Yeah, true.
I'm not kind when that comes around. Good point. Adam, you made, honestly, like when we read this feedback, you made our week. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You know how you can make your week? By signing up for Linode. Visit linode.com/tux to get started. And for those that don't know, Linode has a lot of great stuff. You'll see why over 1 million developers trust Linode for their infrastructure. Linode provides solutions and services to accelerate innovation, and you can build everything yourself or use one of their one-click apps from their app marketplace, which has a plethora of options to deploy everything from Plesk and WordPress to Valheim and Minecraft servers. Plus, Linode even has VPN-friendly virtual servers, so you can create secure connections over the internet, protecting you on public Wi-Fi. Because if you're at a coffee shop, you should not be using their Wi-Fi.
Or going to scale.
Or going to a conference. It's not a great idea to do a public Wi-Fi unless you have a VPN. So you can set one up through Linode and keep your data private and guard yourself from malware and attacks from hackers. And if that wasn't enough, every plan with Linode gives you human-powered customer support. That's right, a human is involved in this, not just some automated system. So if you need help, someone will pick up the phone, respond to your email, or reply to you on social media 24/7, 365. So visit linode.com/tux to create a free account. Plus, when you use that URL, you'll let them know that we sent you, which is, of course, good for us, but also you get a 60-day, $100 free credit when you sign up for your account that way with linode.com/tux. Again, go get started on Linode's awesome cloud platform by going to linode.com/tux.
So our main topic this week is really interesting because I noticed there were some people in the community asking about, hey, do I need an antivirus for Linux? There's lots of new people coming into Linux every single day. Obviously, with the excitement that Steam Deck brought to the gaming market, the excitement of how Windows continues to make itself worse and worse with every version, we've got a lot of new people who want to try Linux for the first time. And it made me think back to my 30 days of Linux journey, back when I first started Linux for the first time. I remember thinking, and I found a box here that is so outdated, it's for Android 4.4 plus, right? So this is the last time that I bought an antivirus software, was Malwarebytes. And I remember coming into Linux going, okay, I've got everything set up. What antivirus do I install and use? Like, this was completely confusing to me because every other time, if you buy a Windows machine, you buy a Mac machine, if you're at the store, the people are going to be like, okay, let's put an antivirus on this right away. Like, that's your first step of protection. But nobody was recommending that in the Linux community. Nobody was telling me to install an antivirus. This doesn't make any sense. What do you mean we don't need an antivirus? I don't.
Not only would you not hear, people wouldn't be recommending it, you would also hear people saying that you just don't need one. You know, that's a very common thing that you'd have for many years. And we're going to ask the question: can Linux get viruses? And do you need to get an antivirus now? Has it changed? Will it change? What are the answers?
Yes, because every week you're reading about vulnerabilities, attacks, and Linux is growing as a platform. It's everywhere. Servers, IoT devices, which obviously have a lot of security potential holes in them, and just our regular desktop computers. All of these things create potential attack vectors. So should we, and it's not like we don't have antivirus programs in Linux. We do. Should regular users be installing them? Because you don't hear about it. We don't talk about it on this podcast about people installing it. You don't hear it in the Linux community very often. So let's start with that question of what makes Linux secure enough that we're just now talking about this like 6 years later of again, should we have, because obviously there's something different in there. And so, Michael, the package system for Linux is a little bit different than you would get from Mac OS and Windows. So maybe we should start
a little bit different. So the package system is a good way to start because it allows you to get kind of like a curated experience. So some of the packages, depending on what distro you use, are going to be done by the distro themselves, and they're going to compile it and maintain it and publish the updates for you. And they oftentimes have automated systems to make sure that they catch stuff that might be added. And also you have to request to get access to the repo in the first place, which means it's a very, very high likelihood that it's going to be a clean experience for the most part. Now, it's not going to say that there aren't going to be bugs and there's not going to be breaks and that sort of stuff, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about stuff that's, malicious. And that kind of thing. Yeah. So in that sense, the package management system allows the distro maintainers to control the accessibility for the users, so that's kind of like a nice curated system. Which means that if you're just using the system's package management for your apps, you're very, very unlikely to get hit by any kind of virus. Now, when you venture out into other things like other formats or just randomly downloading from a website, then you're introducing the more possibilities. But the package management system that we have through like apt for Debian-based systems or RPM for Fedora and Red Hat type systems and things like that, where you have like OpenSUSE has their own approach to it and Arch even has their own approach. And these sorts of situations allows you to have a curated experience that you don't really have to worry about.
But if you compare this to Windows or even Mac, I would say Mac probably has a better store experience. But this is a place actually Linux is far ahead of the competition, in my opinion, because Windows Store is a disaster.
A disaster, yeah.
Windows Store is full of, and has been historically full of malicious software pretending it's a piece of software that it's actually not, and the rules just seem to be wild, wild west for it. And if you look at Mac Store, it's just very limited in what options it has because it's so overly curated. But the other thing in the package management system that makes Linux very popular is that the majority of, if not all of the software is open source, which depending on the distro that you use. So that means that people can actually look into the code. So just being open source by itself, if I release a malicious package and it's not open source, somebody has to decide to go and reverse engineer that to see if there's something malicious in it. And they might not even have access to see some of those pieces, even if they reverse engineer it fully. Whereas open source, you're saying, here's all my code, go look at it. And that allows you to have a lot more control. I do want to say, though, for Arch, you mentioned specifically, there are user repositories in which you have a little more danger lurking there. Not because it's not necessarily open source. Many of the packages, most of the packaging is, but because it's users that are responsible for that alone. There's no company intervention there at all.
There's no curation. Yeah.
Arch is basically just saying, hey, if users want to package something so that others can download it, you can do it here. AUR is amazing. It's powerful, but that's why you want to utilize something that if you're utilizing the AUR, you want to be able to actually look at the code and the steps before you go just installing things randomly in the AUR, because it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage. Now, again, in Windows, what are you going to do? Likely get your software, you're going to go on the internet. And how many times have we seen sites that get spoofed on the internet?
Yeah.
Or even if they're not spoofed, someone actually gets the main site and changes out the download file on there to something that's malicious and all those things. So that's why there's just a lot more instances of that happening in that world. But there's more to it than that, because once you download that software, Linux is also different in how its user permissions are set up, which offers some protection.
Yeah, exactly, Ryan. And yeah, because Linux is compartmentalized, it has a great system, honestly, of checks and balances in place that help stop malware and viruses from spreading in the OS. For instance, with the user permission system, software doesn't install on its own without the proper permission being given, which makes it much more difficult to run behind the scenes software installs and malicious source code.
Yeah, right. Like Windows has like drive-by infections and stuff where you can you click something accidentally, all of a sudden it's infected. Whereas with Linux, when you install, you can download a virus and it won't have permissions to run. And then if you never run it, it won't infect you, even though it's on your system. And that's not a thing that Windows people can typically say.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Correct.
You mentioned the file system. The files are separated from system files, and you have to have administrative rights, your system files and user files, and you have to have administrative rights to make changes in there. So that's a protection. But tools like AppArmor and SE Linux, which also restrict app access. So these tools within a lot of distros will stop this code, even if it's trying to access things. It's not going to give it carte blanche check to go wherever it wants and access mics and cameras and everything else. It's going to restrict that, which is why sometimes if you install certain packages like a Flatpak, for instance, and it doesn't have immediate access to everything on your system right away, like for your file system, it'll just have access to a certain directory or different things. So these are ways that these tools are utilized to basically keep a piece of software from just having the ability to change anything at once, which you don't see on Windows, for instance.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think that the separation of the file system and the server and the root system and the user system is very good, because it means that you're organizing stuff better too. So you have your stuff in a separate folder. You don't have to worry about mixing and matching, which in other systems happens quite a bit. But also the SE Linux thing, there's times where we've had vulnerabilities that are announced that SE Linux itself was the solution. If you had that installed, it would take care of it. And AppArmor in a similar way, sometimes where they'll just take care of the thing, even though you could still be infected or affected by this vulnerability. These systems are able to kind of negate it for you in certain cases, which is one of the reasons why if you have a system that doesn't have one of those things, hopefully consider getting one that supports at least one of either AppArmor or SE Linux. Security-focused development is also a very important piece for the Linux ecosystem, because Linux and stuff made for Linux is developed with security as a forefront to the process. And they also do development in open and transparency. So if there are issues that need to be addressed, people can see it as it's being made and fix it on the fly. So this allows security experts to kind of like audit the system and fix vulnerabilities and all that sort of stuff, both in the operating system and in other projects and applications that you're using.
Yeah, and there's also more awareness in the community.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the point. More awareness in the community, because for me, one of the big draws to Linux, and we hear this a lot, is the fact that it's a constant learning experience. Like there's so much to learn in Linux. And I've been in Linux like 5-6 years now, and I still feel like I'm brand new in there. Like there's always somebody mentioning something. I have no idea what they're talking about, and I have to go look it up and figure it out and see if it's something I like or need. And that's kind of the exciting thing about Linux. But I thought I knew operating systems. I've said this on prior shows before because I worked in IT and Windows environments and things, and then I came to Linux and realized I knew nothing about operating systems, really, how these things get built and how everything interoperates, and that's what Linux teaches you. So people who get into the Linux community, I think in general, have more knowledge of security and privacy on that factor alone, just kind of understanding how things work. You can't totally rely on that 100%, because not every user goes into Linux with the idea they want to learn it. They just want to use it as a tool. I get that, but I think just in general, we have more people who are security conscious in the community, just because it's a fun thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryan. And I know from experience that companies often hire hackers and security experts, like Bo Weaver, who we've had on the show several times.
Yep.
They hire experts like him to work on Linux because they understand the points of penetration of abusive code in the operating system and understand how to prevent it. Yeah.
So that's really exciting, right? Linux is really secure. But, Michael, you asked the question, elephant in the room, is Linux immune to viruses and malware?
The answer to that is no, it's not. No. Nothing is immune to viruses and malware.
Wasn't there a distro that claimed that, though? Like, remember they had on their page, I'm not going to name the distro, but they had on their page 100% immune to viruses.
Yeah. But it would be that they said, I think it was 100% immune to Windows viruses.
Oh, maybe that's how they.
But the thing that was funny about that is because even that was not true. Because I'm not going to name which one it was, but I remember distinctively that distro had Wine installed, which means that it's no longer 100%. If you can run Windows applications, you can also run Windows viruses. So even that statement itself was like absurd. But then they they negated the only one that could possibly have been true as like it's a different OS. So you could have argued that it was invulnerable to those particulars, and then they made it vulnerable anyway. But this is something that's funny because if it can execute code, it's possible to have the ability to be, maliciously attacked. So there's no such thing as immune, but Linux is more likely to be secure because of all the things we mentioned previously. So that's why a lot of the times you wouldn't have a virus or antivirus suggestion, because you'd be running an antivirus to use resources of your system, and most of the time it's not necessary.
So you're saying I don't need to renew my Malwarebytes subscription here, Michael?
From years ago? No.
Yeah. Oh, man.
You probably don't. Now, I can't guarantee you 100% that you should not ever have this, but at the moment, the way that the Linux system works is that you have these other pieces that are kind of making it unnecessary. So it's not really like a thing that you have to worry about, because on Windows systems, the antiviruses are trying to catch when things get into your system. But with Linux, even if those things get on your system, they're not going to run, so they can't do anything. Yeah. You have to manually activate them to make them work. Now, if the individual user downloads a virus and installs the virus and all of that, and you don't get the benefits of the system, then you're going to be infected. And an antivirus in those cases might be something to consider.
In cases where this could happen is going into, like, you have certain scripts you find on GitHub and things that you execute as a bash script. For instance, like the .sh files and things, if you just randomly downloading code like that and installing it.
If you downloaded Michael AI from GitHub, I mean...
No, that's perfectly secure and safe. In fact, you have Michael protecting your computer. It's brilliant. It's like a second brain in there. But you don't want to treat it like an impenetrable fortress where you just go downloading everything and trying stuff, because it can be compromised. Like Linux there is no such thing as an operating system that can't... Even Chrome OS, where they act like it's impossible for anything to ever hit it. There's nothing that's impossible if it's software to be compromised. It's just far less likely, because Chrome OS kind of relies a little bit on Linux kernel, but it's far less likely for that to happen there. And so it's one of those things where I wouldn't go around like daring a hacker like Bo Weaver to break into your Linux system. He probably would find a way eventually. At the same time,
where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, there's a way.
If you use some basic precautions, right? You're not installing a billion extensions in your Firefox browser, for instance, because we talked about Linux, but if you got other software, if you're not installing 1,000 extensions in your IDE, those extensions in your IDEs can have...
I love extensions, by the way, Ryan. I have lots.
I know. We know. I've made you get rid of lots, too.
I still have lots left, but
that could introduce different kinds of vulnerabilities as well. It's not just a virus or malware. It may be something that's just collecting data or turning on your camera, for instance, and things like that.
Yeah. So if you have a lot of extensions, just cut them in half if you don't need
just
them.
cut them in half.
Yeah,
and then you've eliminated a lot of attack surface right there.
Yeah. Well, let's just face it. Anytime you are on the internet or on an intranet, you are vulnerable, no matter what OS you're using. It's just that Linux does have these, checks and balances in place. And also, it was built as kind of the infrastructure OS for server side, for IoT, for the cloud, for the internet. And, that's one of its strengths, because it was built for that in mind. And then the desktop came later.
Yes. Because servers are going to be a very big target, and it was built so that it would be taking in consideration that it would be a target. Yeah. That's why there's a lot of effort put into security to make sure that it is as good as it can be, with the involvement of the developers who are currently working on it and that sort of stuff.
I like you brought up that point, because I've heard this dumb argument that's like, of course Linux isn't targeted. It's such a small part of the PC community. And I'm like, okay,
it's ridiculous.
We control the world.
Literally, the biggest targets that you could possibly want to go after are running Linux on their infrastructure, which is the business servers and things that go versus going for somebody's personal computer. Is generally one of those things where they're just picking random names off of a blacklist or something, or they've picked you out specifically. But if you're in a real government organized or non-government organized hacking organization, the businesses are where they really want to get as targets, and that makes Linux the biggest target. I think,
Yeah.
out there for somebody to try to compromise.
Yeah.
And so
it's the most used operating system in the world. And it is the biggest target, but because it is built with that modularity and the system of checks and balances, it keeps the infrastructure secure, and it's amazing. We should actually have a lot more viruses on Linux, but we don't.
Yes.
And we do have some, just for those who are curious. Yes, there are all vulnerabilities at times. There's viruses at times. There's worms at times. Like, this does happen. It's just very rare. And that's why you see articles published. They're huge news. Linux virus has happened. It's so huge because it happens so rarely that it's news. Whereas when Windows, it's another Tuesday. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
So...
And it's so true, Michael. And many of the worms out there, like the recent IoT-based Linux .y patch, it's spread because of outdated software and firmware.
Oh, updating your system, Michael?
Yes. Updates.
I don't understand what this word means.
That's the solution.
We tell people to constantly make sure they're running their updates. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Everyone should update your system and make sure you have the latest and greatest software that has the most fixes and patches and all of that stuff.
Yes.
Do what I say, not what I do.
Jill, how do we know Michael doesn't have worms? We're about to see him in scale.
Yeah.
He could have worms, because he's just...
I'll leave this computer behind. How about that?
Thank you.
Well,
okay, perfect.
Fortunately, because there's SC Linux in the background, it didn't.
I do have that.
You couldn't
That's true.
spread it. Yeah.
All right.
I do have SE Linux, so we're good. At least I have some protections in my system. But also, to be serious, like I do update, not as much as I should, but I do update. But to be serious, there are many benefits to it in the way that Linux is built, so you don't have to worry about it. And we were talking about the server thing. I just wanted to reiterate something. Desktop computing is dominated by Windows. That's true. Linux is not the dominant force. But now, every other form of computing, Linux is the dominant force. So let's just, it's going to be a huge target. And I also thought about something as we were talking about it, that there might be, everybody talks about how fragmentation is a problem in Linux. And it might even be like a superpower in a way. Because if you think about it, each distro is a separate operating system, have separate configurations and separate things. So it makes it even harder to target Linux as a specific, because you're targeting dozens of different operating systems that are unique in many ways. So it creates this cohesive ecosystem where we all collaborate together, but at the same time, we're also sort of creating barriers against these kinds of attacks.
You got the most brilliant minds in the industry looking through code, trying to find vulnerabilities and things in there. Like, you're not going to find that anywhere else. All around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you got people in there looking. But again, this doesn't mean you can be stupid with your computer. One of our patrons mentioned, for instance, and this is absolutely true, one of the biggest problems facing businesses today is phishing attempts. In a phishing attempt, if somebody is, and because there's so many data leaks, by the way, when we talk about metadata and those things, not to get on a soapbox, but I will for just 1 second. When we talk about why metadata and gathering data on people is a problem, and other people are like, oh, it's fine, whatever, everybody knows everything about me anyways. What's happened is the attacks have become, for phishing, so much more sophisticated, because just like Google takes all of your information, collects it all together, and creates a profile on you, the hackers are now smart enough to do that as well. So these organizations are taking data leaks that have happened over the last 10 years. They're combining all of that information. So when they're sending me an email to try to phish attempt, it has my full name, it has my address, it has the actual bank that I use, it has all of this stuff that makes it look so legitimate. That
it has the name of your first grade teacher. So weird.
Probably does. But that's the point, is phishing attempts are a big thing. And Linux security, all of that, it really starts with the user at the end of the day. Know what you're installing. If you're going to use the AUR, it's amazing, but understand the AUR and the limitations and things of it. If you're an Arch user, for instance, or if you do find scripts sitting out there on GitHub, don't just be like, oh, it's a cool script, let me run it. Like, look through the code, see if there's something there. Funny enough, some of the pieces of software that have been found to be like crypto miners and stuff actually had in the code a section commented crypto mining section, or something that was so obvious. So even if you don't read code, it's like, wait a minute, I'm installing a web browser extension that has code that says.
And also, some of the
mining.
crypto miners are actually like they're named crypto miners. Even if you don't look at the comments, they still give you an indicator like you don't want this. Sure,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
but
You got to be smart as a user. For sure.
exactly. There's one thing, but I also had a question that was that's asked to me of like antiviruses, and it was an interesting one because I never thought about it. It was, what if I want to get an antivirus just because it makes me feel better, just to know it's there? And I thought, sure, why not? Go ahead.
Do it. Clam
There's
AV.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Clam
go
AV is
ahead.
great.
So for those who are wanting to know if like, do you need one? No. But if you use one, it'll be fine. So feel free to do it if you want to.
Yeah, and you could give the Windows user could give the Linux user a flash drive, and we can scan it on Clam AV. Now that those viruses won't hurt our system, but at least we can prevent them from affecting yours.
There you go.
Oh, that's a very good point. It also, you might really want to have an antivirus if you're connected to a network that has Windows machines attached to it.
Yes.
There might be a value in there because the antivirus wouldn't be for you; it would be for whoever's using the Windows thing. So if you're at a company that has the mixed operating systems, you might want to do it just to protect the other weaker system.
The other weaker system. That's what Bo Weaver used to say. He always keeps a Windows computer in his house so he can attack it. And I love that thought. He's a professional hacker. All right. So another way to stay secure is to use Bitwarden. We've been talking about Bitwarden for a long time on this show. And if you haven't converted yet, what's your problem? It's the greatest password manager on the planet.
Problem?
What's your problem? Go to bitwarden.com/tux right now. Fix it /TUX because you may not need antivirus software, but you definitely need a good password manager.
Yes.
Password manager software allows you to have peace of mind knowing your online accounts are secure, and Bitwarden provides you the tools to store all your passwords in a secured vault, auto-generate those passwords and usernames for you, even automatically fill them in if you want to, so you don't have to. You can access your data across many types of devices. You can use your web browser, mobile apps, desktop applications, even the command line. Bitwarden seals and encrypts your private data with end-to-end encryption before it ever leaves your device, so you know you're the only person with access to your data. So I want you to go right now to bitwarden.com/TUX and get started. And you can get started for free. And you can use all kinds of amazing benefits with Bitwarden for free. It's not one of those things where you just sign up and you get nothing. You can use all of their amazing services to secure and start creating and generating passwords for sites for free. But you're going to love it so much, you're going to want to give them the $10 a year for their premium account because you're going to add in a gigabyte of encrypted file storage. Yeah, you're just going to want to keep giving them money because it's so good. Gigabyte of encrypted file storage, 2-step login with YubiKey, U2F Duo, Vault Health Reports, Bitwarden Authenticator. So you got TOTP. Use that instead of the SMS messaging. Another way to stay more secure. Priority customer support for less than $1 per month. I mean, why wouldn't you? That's cheaper now than a McDonald's value meal. And McDonald's isn't saving you, it's killing you. Whereas Bitwarden's saving you. So bitwarden.com/TUX to get started. Thanks again for Bitwarden for sponsoring this episode of Destination Linux. All right, so there's this news this week, and Michael, and Jill, I don't know how to feel about this. Like, I got mad at it at first, and then I was like, whatever, I don't care. And I was like, maybe it makes sense. Yeah. And I got mad
I'm
again.
offended, and then I didn't really, it's like, it's not a big deal. And then I'm also like,
up, down, up, down.
I'm all over the place with this, so maybe you can help sort it out for me. Canonical recently published some information on their discourse relating to the future of Ubuntu flavor packaging defaults. In this article, I did take a couple of quotes that are a little out of place, so I'm going to say that up front, but it kind of cracked me up because I didn't do that on purpose. I was just kind of grabbing quotes from the article, and when you read the quotes in the position that I grabbed them, the whole thing seems to be they completely contradict each other here. So the first part says, in this article, flavors build around a common core experience where it is immediately clear that you're using Ubuntu and provide their own finesse on top. Then they go on to say, again, this is a little couple paragraphs down, Ubuntu builds on a foundation of deb packages and believes in the advantages of snaps, and also believes in the culture of openness where other packaging technologies are available and allow developers and users to explore different approaches. That seems good. Like, they want us to go out there and explore all these different things. Good. So therefore, Flatpaks won't be a part of any of the Ubuntu flavors anymore. So
the thing about Canonical is that they are doing this in a way that I don't really feel like is a huge deal, but at the same time, it is weird the way it's worded. they believe in the advantages of snaps. Sure, there are some clear advantages of snaps. There's some really cool ideas they have with it, especially with like the command line part of snap. And they also like the culture of openness, but at the same time, removing Flatpaks from that culture is kind of weird. But it is worth noting that they didn't really have Flatpaks installed in a full sense of the concept. When you install Flatpak, you're installing a format technology, but you're not actually installing a repo to get those Flatpaks from. You're only installing the technology itself. You still need a repo. So by removing the pre-installed Flatpak part of it, you're not really changing much. They still need to go and know what a Flatpak is, know what repo to use, like the FlatHub, and then go manually install the FlatHub. So all they're doing is adding an extra step on top of that to install Flatpak itself. So is it a huge change? Not really, but it just seems unnecessary, really. Like they really still had to do manual interactions. So it doesn't really seem like this news needed to happen to me.
I feel like developers made a choice with Ubuntu, for instance, to say, hey, we think for our community, we're going to have a one-click Flatpak install because maybe a lot of our users are utilizing Flatpak and not snaps. There's a lot of people out there who don't like snaps. It's just a thing. And so you still love Ubuntu, or Kubuntu in that case, but you want to use Flatpaks instead, and they were making it a one-click easy install, but now they can't even do that. It just seems like, I don't know, it feels Microsoft-y in some ways. Kind of like, yeah, you can install another browser if you want, but we're going to put a bunch of prompts and things to really kind of force you to try to use our Edge browser as much as possible. It just feels that way, but you're right, like, that's the arguing back and forth I do, Michael. Like, is it a big deal? Not really, but it kind of feels a little scummy. I don't know.
It is going to make a little bit more work for the likes of Martin Wimpress with Ubuntu Mate, because they included that function to install Flatpaks easily with 22.04 LTS. And so that is going to be annoying for them and for those flavors that have already integrated it or we're going to integrate it, like with Ubuntu Unity. Yeah.
It's interesting because the Flatpak being removed is not a huge problem necessarily because you still have to go through the setting up of the FlatHub, but the Kubuntu experience of doing that was so good. It was so easy to do. It was very convenient for the user. The user experience overall was great because all you did was open Discover, click a button, and you're done. That is what I was hoping to see for all the flavors and eventually Ubuntu itself. But based on this news, I suggest that's not going to be possible.
I feel like on the other side of it, there's so many advantages to snaps that why do you have to force people to use something? Like, and try to say that this is kind of the integrated environment. If it's good enough, if you've done what you're supposed to, everyone would just be using snaps. But snaps are fantastic for server side, but I think most people in my circle, I'm not saying this is the general answer of the population of Linux users, people in my circle generally prefer Flatpaks for their desktop software, pieces, Audacity, whatever they're using, things like that. If you're doing something server related, you're going to be using a snap because Flatpaks just don't have that capability. So snaps have made a name for themselves doing that. If they made themselves better with the desktop experience apps, then people would probably be fine utilizing them, but that's not been the case. So instead of like fixing that, you're kind of, hey, pretend Flatpaks don't exist. We're snaps. Everything needs to be a snap, type of thing. It just feels weird, but I can't get super mad at it, and I'm not happy about it either. So that's where I'm at.
I don't know. To me, it feels really just unnecessary. The removal of it probably wouldn't have been a big deal if like article things weren't talking about it, and if we weren't talking about it in the show, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal. People wouldn't have even noticed it.
Yeah.
Because installing the FlatHub, you would probably like assume you don't have Flatpak on Ubuntu anyway.
True.
So you would just do that process as well. So it wouldn't really change much of the experience for typical users other than ones who have like an easier access in the specific flavors. But it just, to me, I think the thing that makes me feel weird about it, like I feel at one side of my half of me says, okay, it's not a big deal. Who cares? It's not really that much of a difference for the user. The other half of me is like, well, if it's not a big deal, then it feels unnecessary. Why bother doing it in the first place?
You're right. You've convinced me. I'm mad about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure I was mad about it.
But now I am sure. I'm mad about it. Angry.
Yeah, and me personally, honestly, I always just use the command line FlatHub commands. I've never used the GUI for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish the Flatpak commands were better because they're so difficult. You have to, if you want to type it, good luck because it's not very straightforward.
I know, you got to cut and paste.
I mean, one of our patrons said it well. It's like the point of Flavors for them is you get to experience another take on top of the Ubuntu. And by removing that decision, saying, no, now everybody wants to be an official flavor. Okay, so to be really clear on this, though, this doesn't impact other distros like Pop! OS or Mint or things that are not an official Ubuntu flavor. Ubuntu only has this kind of control, if you will, over official Ubuntu flavors to make them change that. So I have seen people in the community saying, hey, this is going to impact them, but they don't have to make that choice.
Yeah, it's all just because it's a derivative of Ubuntu doesn't mean it's affected by this. It's only the official flavors that are sanctioned by Canonical and Ubuntu itself. And I'd also say that it's not really even a control thing because it's not like this was a decree on high that was passed down to the lowly flavors. It was a request to them and say, do you have a problem with doing this? And they all agreed. So it wasn't like this was like a forcing of it. It was a question that they went to each of the flavor developers and asked them if they were okay with it. And maybe they're not all ecstatic about it, but they were at least all okay with it to do it. To me, I feel like it's an unnecessary thing, but it also isn't a big deal. So at the end of the day, all right.
Yeah.
Sure. Fine. Canonical. Quit being that way. So, Michael, you actually did talk to some people in the community, developers through different distros and things like that to kind of get their take on this. The general consensus from them, should I be mad or no? Did they answer that question directly? Should Ryan be mad or no?
I did not ask them if Ryan should be mad or not.
Okay.
Unfortunately. But I did reach out to some of the developers for the Ubuntu Flavors to see what their opinion is. And they were all very similar in like consensus of they also were fine with the decision, but didn't really, they weren't happy about it. It wasn't like they understood the perspective of why they wanted to do it. And it kind of makes sense with the idea of one of the comments that was made was on the forum that was a support system, right? If Canonical has something by default, they are expected to provide support with it. And in the sense of Flatpaks, they would not want to provide that support. So it would make sense that they would remove it for that reason. And it makes sense, but at the same time, also the repo is not available at the first point, so you wouldn't really have to worry about supporting certain types of Flatpaks or certain specific Flatpaks. So the flavor developers basically agreed with that and also thought that it's maybe not necessary anyway. But at the same time, that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm not bothered by it, but I do think it was not a necessary thing to do. And that kind of bothers me, but at the same time, it's not a big deal overall. It doesn't change the user experience. If it was a significant change to the impact of the user experience, I'd be bothered by it. But this is not one of those things. You still had to manually install the FlatHub in most distros or most flavors. So
I think people are just going to install it anyways because most people in my circle
it's not going to stop
tend to enjoy Flatpak there, but the question is, will they take a move to make that more difficult down the road too? Are we going to get more Microsofty here? Since snaps aren't exactly very easy to go create your own snap store and other things and it's not. This whole snap thing hasn't followed the philosophy we want it to follow from the very beginning. Not saying snaps are bad, but they're a little bit of an edge case already in how they're deployed, and now we're doing this. It's kind of like, could you be a little less Microsoft-y, Canonical? Thanks. Hey, Jill, cheer me up with some gaming news.
Woohoo! I will, Ryan. So Ryan found, honestly, one of my favorite surreal first-person puzzler games from 2020, Superliminal. Yes! So this is an awesome game. And the game actually is played from a first-person perspective, and it incorporates gameplay elements around optical illusions that are so cool, and forced perspective. And certain objects, for instance, when you pick up like a chess piece, it can be moved towards or away from the player, but when placed back down, scale to the size as the player had viewed them, enabling you, the player, to solve puzzles to complete the game. It sounds kind of complex, but once you get started...
Is this a game?
I'm going to try to attempt to explain it based on my not playing it. However... I do own this game, and I have seen the demo, and it was very interesting. That's why I bought it. I just never played it. But what the idea is that you're using different perspectives. So you look at something from a distance, and it feels like a very big thing can feel small from a distance, and vice versa as well. And the idea is it takes this game does those things to solve puzzles. So like you have a coffee cup in your hand, and it is very small. But then you turn at an angle and you can set it down massive so it can like hold a big like a lot of water or whatever. And that's how you could solve one of the puzzles, for example.
You know what I like about this? One of my favorite movies, Dead Poets Society, when Robin Williams tells the class to stand on their desks to see the world in a different perspective.
Oh, yes.
It's like gamifying that very scene right there of seeing the world from a different point of view.
Yeah, so you actually, your character is... You're a participant in a dream therapy program, but during the study,
that's cool.
You become trapped in a reoccurring dream cycle. That's what is cool, and it is actually cool. Guided by the voice of the study's overseer, Dr. Glenn Pierce, on how to escape from the dream. And honestly, most of the puzzles involve traversing through a series of rooms to reach their exits. It's just a really fun game. It's very mind-bending, and that's what I love about it. It kind of has that...
Yes.
It has elements of some other games we have talked about.
17,000 positive reviews, Jill. It's 17,000 positive reviews. That's insane.
Think of it like the Stanley Parable, but almost in reverse. I don't know how to explain it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What we're basically saying is that if this sounds interesting, and even if it doesn't, you should just check out the video that demonstrates how the game works, because I think we might not be giving it justice at this point.
Yeah.
But
it's
I do think that it is a really cool idea. It's a very cool puzzle game idea. It's like when people think about Portal, they don't necessarily think about it being a puzzle game, but it is 100% a Portal game. Portal is a puzzle game, and it's a new take on a puzzle game, and it's really fun. And this is a similar style, but with the perspective playing around, and it is definitely mind-bending.
And if you like the surreal first-person puzzlers or games like Portal, and if you've played Antechamber, Cairo, and Mind, Path to Thalamus, which are honestly in the top 10 of my all-time favorite games, you will love this game. It's just think of it as Portal, but even more surreal.
Right.
This is the type of game I would buy, then look on YouTube to see all the solutions. And just make myself feel smart.
That's not
by just doing fun, whatever they do, and then I got it first time. Look at that.
Yeah, and it's awesome because Superliminal works on our penguins out of the box, and the developer Pillow Castle originally released an early access demo of the game where the community had input on how to improve it and fix bugs. So they've been really concerned about the community, and they've really liked all the feedback from the Linux users. And it works beautifully on the Steam Deck, even though I don't recommend Steam Deck for first-person puzzlers.
Oh, yes. That's true. That's for sure.
But it does work well.
That's a little freaky. For sure. But I will say that, Ryan, I have this game already, and I'm going to play it and record my experience and show you how to solve the things, and I'll just title it Helping Ryan Play Subliminal.
Perfect. I'll finally watch one of your videos.
Superliminal. Oh, wait, what?
Superliminal.
Oh, never mind.
It's 50% off until Monday at $9.99 in the Steam store.
Yes. So hopefully you get it in time for the sale. If not, it's still worth it. It's still really cool.
It's still, under $20.
Superliminal. I said the wrong name earlier, so I just want to clarify. Superliminal.
All right, in our software spotlight, hey, if you're frustrated with this kind of forced snap thing going on, try unsnap. That's our software spotlight this week. Quickly migrate from using snap packages to Flatpaks. Quickly and easily migrate from using snap for applications to Flatpak. It runs as a 2-stage process. It unsnaps itself, generates the script to do the actual migration, and this enables users to view or edit the scripts prior to execution, which we talked about the importance of that in the security side. But if you want to take all those snaps that Canonical wants you to use and you want to make them all the Flatpak version, you could use Popey's very own unsnap tool. And I just thought, what a great software spotlight for this episode.
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
So the idea for those who are curious, basically it finds snaps that you have installed, sees there's Flatpaks for those snaps as like alternative, and then switches to those Flatpaks. That's the gist of it.
Love it.
And I think this is a good spotlight, and also I think it flows really well with the tip of the week, don't you think?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
So the tip of the week this week is how to install Flatpak inside of Ubuntu.
We're not bitter. We're not a bitter
Yes.
podcast.
We're not bitter at all. We just found this funny, so that's why we're doing it. So our tip of the week is installing Flatpaks on Ubuntu, and it's really simple. It's just sudo apt install Flatpak. That's it. And then you would need to get the GNOME software plugin as well. We'll have all this stuff in the show notes. And then you'll need to install the FlatHub repository. Now, this one's a weird one, and it's very difficult to say out loud, to actually, comprehend audibly. So just check out the show notes, because it's a very long, it's a long one with lots of parameters. So go to the show notes. We'll have that linked and all the details for that in there. And also you can go to flatpak.org/setup/Ubuntu, and you can follow the steps there as well. But of course you want to go to the show notes, because that's where the most useful information is for every episode of Destination Linux. Superliminal useful.
Yes, it's superliminal. You can also go to the FlatHub online too. They have a really good tutorial.
Yeah. So if you're annoyed by not having Flatpaks, now you know how to get it back. Even though technically it hasn't happened yet, because it won't be until the next release. But
probably whatever. If you were annoyed by it, you already know how to do that. It's just funny.
Yeah.
Yes. We just found it funny, but for the timing, that's all.
Could you imagine being able to hang out with this crew like live? You can. If
it would be the best time ever of your life.
Yes, the best time of your life. You want the best experience you've ever had. I don't care if you've had kids born, whatever. Meet us. That will trump everything in your life. You married the perfect, spouse of your dreams. Still second to meeting us. Everything is second to meeting us.
You got the best. Anything you can imagine as being a great time of your life, it pales in comparison to meeting us at scale.
Yeah,
we are so confident in our ridiculous arrogance that we're going to
give you 50% off your ticket. We're so confident in our ridiculous arrogance.
We're going to make it even better. The best time of your life will be even better somehow because of that 50% discount. All you got to do is use the coupon code TUX. That's TUX. So simple. You can enjoy it even more.
Yep.
Than what
Saving money makes you enjoy things more. You go scale registration, type in TUX in the promo code, get 50% off your TUX pass. And they're always looking for volunteers, so make sure to check out there if you can volunteer and help them out. We'll have links to that in the show notes. And we also received a generous donation from anonymous user at Tux Digital Net and Destination Linux Podcast. It was made on behalf of us, which we really appreciate, to cover a small batch of tickets for students and those who recently lost their jobs. So if finances are tough, you need help with your scale ticket, DM info@socallinuxexpo.org. I finally read it right. Instead of saying social, it's just so close. socallinuxexpo.org there to get started.
Yeah, and make sure to check out something special that we wanted everyone to know that's happening at Scale. So on Sunday at Scale, there is an event called Open Source Career Day, which our friend Der Hans is organizing. And OSCD will feature career consulting sessions, resume reviews, career guidance, and mock interviews, and a full day of awesome talks on Sunday, March 12th, 2023. And if you can't be there for the event, you can always watch the videos later on the SoCal Linux Expo YouTube site.
Very cool. And also, for those who are curious, the mock interviews are for ways that you can basically be interviewed to kind of get used to doing the interview experience. It's not where we interview Ryan and just mock him all the time.
Oh, darn it.
Michael.
It's not that part.
Oh,
Even though that would be amazing and would be great content,
every
that's
time
not
I
what
answer,
it's about.
everyone
That
mocks
would
how
be-
stupid the answer was. Yeah.
Exactly.
That would be a mocking interview as opposed to a mock interview.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
We should do a roast of Michael at the.
Yeah,
What?
there we go.
Yeah.
I was already setting up. I set you up with just a great change.
Gave it to me.
You pivoted so well. I applaud you there, sir.
Well, a huge thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. Join us on Discord at tuxdigital.com/Discord. And also, we have an amazing discourse forum that you can go hang out with the community as well. And if you want to watch the show live, well, you need to become a patron because we have a bunch of patrons here with us right now. We're live on Sundays doing this recording, but only for the patrons there. So consider becoming a patron, watching the show live, and seeing all the antics. It's the second best thing to coming to Scale. And seeing us live in person is to virtually see us.
Yes, the best time of your life is meeting us at Scale. The second best time of your life is also not the thing you were thinking was. It's being here every week and hanging out with us.
Absolutely.
And you get to seeing it live because also at the end of the show every week, you get to hang out with us in the patron-only post show, and you get to have that experience, the second best experience of your life every time we have a show. Like it can never ends. It's just such a great experience. And you can become a patron by going to tuxdigital.com/contribute. And just in case you missed the live stream, that's okay because as a patron, you get access to unedited versions of the show.
We're giving too much, Michael. It's too much.
It might be too much, but we're going to do it anyway. So tuxdigital.com/contribute to become a patron to get all of these great perks. Oh, too much perks, in fact, as Ryan mentioned.
Too much.
And to even make it better than that, you're going to get more perks. You're going to become a patron of not just Destination Linux, the best podcast ever created, and the best experience, but you're also going to get the best network ever created, which is Tux Digital Network. So you're going to be a patron of the network itself. So you get access to This Week in Linux perks, Destination Linux perks, Hardware Addicts perks, so much more. So tuxdigital.com/contribute. Now, let's say you're missing some clothes in your wardrobe. Maybe you don't have some swag related to Destination Linux, and that's a shame. Let's just admit it. That would be a shame to not have that, or not having it in your closet would be a problem. So you should go to tuxdigital.com/store and pick up a hat, maybe a t-shirt or a hoodie. Mm-hmm. You could even put some mugs in your kitchen so you could have some swag all around your place. And if you don't have that much room for all the different mugs, maybe you get some stickers and put that wherever you want. Yeah, and they go everywhere.
Wallpaper entire house with stickers of Destination
Exactly.
Linux.
You could have an entire, you could have a wall. Exactly. You could basically take Jill's cabinet and do that same thing on your wall and have like an accent wall of just stickers of the Tux Digital Network. What else could you ask for? That would be your third best time of your life of setting that up.
And you need some gear to wear at Scale.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That is definitely a useful thing to do. So if you're going to be at Scale and you want to show us the best time of our lives, then you need to have some swag for Destination Linux. Go to tuxdigital.com/store to get your swag right now.
And make sure to check out all the incredible shows here on Tux Digital. We have so many awesome ones. We have This Week in Linux, The Pseudo Show, the DOS Geek Channel, Linux Out Loud, Hardware Addicts, GameSphere, and our virtual Linux user group, Linux Saloon. And everyone head to tuxdigital.com and subscribe to all these great shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching and the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce.
Everybody have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
We love you.
And the journey to Scale is happening soon.
Yes.